maybe just their
Maybe they're
followers.
handicap parishioners, I guess.
I mean, I'm sure they're not requesting it for, I'm sure it's necessary, or at least they consider it necessary. They said that there is a large vehicle that attempts to drop individuals off, and it's difficult for them to do that. If there's a car parked, or several cars parked in an area where they could have access to the church. So basically,
Do you know
they're,
how many handicapped parishioners they have? Not that it matters, but I was just curious.
no, I do not
I think it does
know.
matter.
What
There has to be a
prevents,
driving force for it. I mean, I'm sure it's been there decades.
what's gonna
I'm just
prevent
curious.
someone who has a handicap placard on their car to just park there and leave their car there during
Because they sign it.
It's not
oh,
the Sunday
No.
only?
Yeah, so you are specifically, they are specifically requesting of you a van drop-off marking.
Basically, they wanted enough space to be able to have the van be able to pull in.
So it wouldn't be handicap parking, it would be handicap van
Access.
access area. So I think that's different than a handicap
Handicap
parking
spot.
spot.
Correct.
Because if I have a placard, I'm allowed to park there. I think that's my understanding. So if they want it specifically for a drop-off or an access area, I would think that that would be the signage, that it would be.
I'm under the impression that they actually want to use it for both, for handicap parking and also for van drop-off. Now, again, how do they keep people from parking there? There's a lot of those kind of issues. I would probably like to rely on them to maybe solve those issues if they come up. Especially since we're talking about a small window of time. If those are designated for a particular time, for a particular service, for church, and something is interfering with them being able to, have people have access during that time, that's a bigger issue. So I would hope that I would rely on them to also be able to work with people who are parking on that street to come up with some solutions as well.
Can they outline what they want in some sort of documentation for us? Because I mean, right now, we're going by your interpretation of what you think they want. and
Maybe it's
what
appropriate to
might
have them come and
I was
address
gonna
us.
say,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I mean, I don't
You
think
know-
we have to go and have them address us and take up an additional amount of time. If they can just succinctly write what it is they need and want, we can review that.
They want a handicap sign, that's what they want. They want a
Well, but
handicap
maybe
sign.
they don't even know what they want. If it is just truly a van access drop-off, then like we should know that that's what it is, and that someone really doesn't need to park there, so then they can just pull up
And they could just send us an
and
email
drop off.
saying that.
And right, because
I
if
don't want these
someone,
meetings to be any longer than they
Right.
already are.
if
I'm
somebody
sorry.
does park there and they're not in the church, they're gonna call to have the police come to remove that car because it's parked there, and then that is a whole nother issue.
Well, I will definitely go back. I guess, I just brought this up for discussion, and I will go back and they can
And one
go
thing,
from there,
So
basically.
you're gonna table that motion?
yes, I think we should table that motion. One thing I would ask, David, is that when you do talk to them, one thing you said that I picked up on is that you said that you would rely on them to manage the problem of whether or not somebody parks there with a placard versus the access van. Well, they probably could have managed the problem originally by putting out cones, right?
Right.
And they aren't doing that, so we could do a half solution for them that doesn't actually fully address it, and then, yeah, and then.
Why don't we just do that?
Just go to them and ask them if that would be a feasible solution. Can we give you cones? I mean, if
We
you're-
would offer that as their solution.
Right.
That would solve the precedent problem, and that would solve somebody parking there with a placard that would interrupt the van. So I would recommend we table this for a little bit more information, see if that's a solution that works for them. If it is not, then follow what Councilperson Weitzel's saying, right? Let's have them send us an email, articulating out what they want, and have them address this one point, right? That, it seems to be a little bit ambiguous, right? who can and can't park there, and if somebody does with a placard park there, are they okay with the van not getting there again? Because, I don't think we'd wanna police that. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. I think you had another item, did you not, under ordinance?
That was,
Oh, no, the ordinance, the light abandoned property, is this one yours, Manager Cowan?
I don't know why I put it under here, but it's here, and I delegated this whole thing to Dave Morgan. He's gonna, depending what council wants to do, Dave Morgan's gonna be the point person on this. It was suggested at the last meeting to get some background information, probably not acceptable, but I do have there, except for the architect. He actually got his architectural degree from Carnegie Mellon University. He was with Michael Baker for 7 years. And the banker, he got his BS from Duquesne University in economics and marketing communication. He's been with PNC for the better part of 12 years and 3 years prior to that with Mellon. The president asked for counsel to advance other names. I have not received any. Whether council wants to move on these appointments or not, that's certainly up to council. Whether you want to do it tonight, or you want to do it in the future, or whether you don't want to do it at all, it's certainly up to council.
Let's do it at the next voting meeting.
Okay.
So we've gotten everything we've asked for, review that, and we'll do it at the next voting meeting. Comprehensive plan. Is this on here for you, April?
Yeah, a combination of myself and Manager Cowan, he's more versed in the process. From my standpoint as a council member, it's a matter of budget for this. Given the other budgetary constraints, I again posed the question to council, is this something we're going to back with money? I mean, things have changed since the last conversation where we were like, oh, yes, this is feasible. Something we can do financially.
I, for one, would still say yes. That it's important, that, the other item that you're probably talking about is a 5-year commitment. I'm not at all comfortable that we put this off for 5 years, given that. So I figure out, it's important for us to figure out a way to deal with this. Anyone else on council? We'll take a poll vote.
I support having a strategic plan. I think it's something that we need.
Comp
Comp plan. A strategic comprehensive plan.
Yes, thank you.
I also agree that we definitely need it. I don't think that we necessarily all at one time have to do every piece of it. I think that we maybe could just start with, I don't even know what, but I don't think that we need to have every single plan developed and done spending X amount of dollars. But I definitely agree that we need to have a comprehensive plan.
So in principle, right, we said that a comprehensive plan is a large undertaking, it can take upwards of 18 months. I think that what we're saying is, if ours didn't take 18 months, but took 36 months, we'd be fine with that. If that helps spread out the cost, it's still a worthy effort.
No, I agree. There is some intergovernmental cooperation that we may want in terms of Thornburg, Ingram, Roslyn Farms, because grant monies are typically awarded more in favor of comprehensive joint municipalities. So if you're comfortable with me hashing that out and making a recommendation to council, I'll be glad to do that.
I would still say yes.
What do you think our number one is, plan that we need like right now?
Finance? Yeah, the finance.
You know, so we could rank them and this is the one that we need absolutely right now.
I'm not sure if that's part of the plan.
No.
Yeah.
The comprehensive plan, maybe we didn't discuss it. The operative word there is comprehensive. It takes in land use, takes in zoning,
Planning.
it takes in planning, it takes in housing stock, it takes in infrastructure, everything about community life is in a comprehensive plan. Not necessarily financing, but to finance maybe some of the recommendations that come out of the plan down the road. Usually a municipality needs to adopt or update their comprehensive plans every 10 years. Last time we did ours was 1991.
And,
With a 2000, I believe, just a cursory, just take a look at it.
Right, like zoning, like maybe
Yeah.
10 years ago, nobody knew that, I don't know, we were gonna all of a sudden find some land and
But
crap.
the last comprehensive plan was a joint plan among Crafton, Ingram, and Thornburg, I believe.
Right.
So, the recommendation is not to do it alone because you're not gonna find the money to do it.
Right.
So you would need buy-in from the other municipalities to cooperate with us.
And I just think that what, our last meeting, that when we took, whatever the meeting was that we talked, I wasn't the last meeting, but previously, and you had said, you know, how much money do you think that would be, and you kind of threw out a number like 150,000 or 100,000, and everybody was kind of like, oh, but that would be for like overall, for everything. That doesn't necessarily mean that coming up with a new zoning plan is gonna cost us
The zoning would follow that comprehensive plan first. That would be your logical next study of the
And
zoning.
and with the blight and abandoned property committee, wouldn't that be a part of this?
They'll probably have done with their assignment before this would start.
But I mean, it
Their-
could
their
be
input.
research-driven data needed for the plan, is that a piece of it? So in essence, we could be getting, like a discounted viewpoint, like if that part doesn't need done, because our appointed committee did it,
Consultant will use whatever we have on the shelf that's still relevant.
right?
And that's part of the study, to take a look at the previous studies as well as the available data that you may have.
And so the recreation plan that we've been working on, that would be a part of that as well? So that's on the shelf
That
as
would
well?
reduce the amount because
Right, okay.
recreation is part of the comprehensive plan. Since we've already done it, they would make reference to that.
Okay, good, so kind of tying together all these pieces, and then like zone, like streets and signs and all that would be a part of it as well? Okay.
Yeah, so I think you need to move forward.
Okay, yeah, I mean, at the next meeting, I'll have recommendations in terms of which communities I think should be involved. I hope to, holding to this, to reach out to their council members, get a feel for where they stand. Go from there.
So I have a COG meeting on the
Oh, well, perfect.
20th. Hold on, do you want to come with me?
Yeah, we're going to a dinner.
Oh, it's, the 20th is
You
the next,
better come to the dinner.
the 20th is the next COG meeting. So if you want me to take something,
You can't just invite me.
I can invite you.
Okay,
I just did.
all right.
I can't be there as the alternate,
So
you
you
can
can
go
be-
in my place.
Okay, that's what I mean, I know there was like,
Yeah, you can be the alternate.
all right.
The only other thing, April, I would say, before we move on that, is, see if the city of Pittsburgh plays any role too, because Crafton Boulevard, you know, the other side of the street of the city of Pittsburgh, there's
That's
blighted
where the
properties.
organization that Bob's involved with. Who's next? Next?
How long you folks want to stay?
No, I don't want you to have a synopsis, but I know,
I did meet, if I could, I did meet with Councilwoman Teresa Kale Smith a couple weeks ago in relation to perhaps the Clearview Trail, the city side and Crafton side would work together, as well as for animal control. Just wanted to report on that, so.
Okay. Yeah, because I wouldn't want them to be part of any comprehensive plan too, especially, given the way we butt up against them. Okay, we're through the committees, discussion items, we're into correspondence. One of the items in the correspondence I know was the letter we got from Councilman Phillips, we discussed that. Was there anything else in correspondence that we needed to discuss?
Just,
Yeah.
if you want to attend a COG dinner, I'll let you know.
Okay, so let's, each individually, let's let, Mary know about that today as before we leave. Any,
By the end of the month.
oh, by the end of the
They
month?
need to know by April 4th.
That's the April COG dinner, right?
Okay. All right, so, action item for everyone to let, Mary know about that. That was the only other correspondence?
Something about
I'll
potholes.
play about potholes.
Another letter?
Did we take care of that, Jamie, the Foster Plot pothole yet, do you know?
Excellent. Okay.
Mayor's happy.
Let's move on to the business agenda. The first motion is the motion we decided to table that we would cover at another meeting, so I'm gonna skip that one. I'll entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2014-2, amending 2014 fee resolution number 2013-16 to include a sign installation fee and compost wood chip delivery service.
So moved.
Second.
Any additional discussion on that? Hearing no discussion, roll call vote.
Mr. Amendola?
Yes.
Ms. Amendola?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yeah.
Ms. Post?
Yes.
Ms. Whitesell?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes. I'll entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 1621, authorizing the Borough of Crafton to incur non-electoral debt in the amount not to exceed $1.3 million through the issuance of a general obligation note for a 5-year term at an interest rate of 2.05% through PNC Bank to be used to finance the settlement cost for a property situate in the Borough of Crafton, known and numbered as block and lot number 68-F250.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion?
I just do have a point of discussion, not for tonight, but we may want to consider changing the finance chair. I'm not comfortable with Mr. Phillips' ability to chair the finances of the borough, given what is happening tonight.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Amendola?
Yes.
Ms. Amendola?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Post?
Yes.
Ms. Whitesell?
Regrettably, yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes. I'll entertain a motion to ratify Borough Council's approval for the work authorization order with Gateway Engineers for the preparation of bid documents in an amount not to exceed $10,000 for the 2014 road improvement program.
So moved.
Maybe if I could just add,
Yes, I
Yeah.
Second. Second.
No.
the reason this is on here is that we had it on the last meeting for $7,000, but we got caught up on what roads we were gonna do, that we actually forgot to authorize them to do this. The difference between the 7,000 initial quote and the 10,000 now is because you've elected to do Woodlawn, and Woodlawn's gonna involve more design work for the ADA ramps.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, roll call vote.
Mr. Amendola?
Yes.
Ms. Amendola?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Post?
Yes.
Ms. Whitesell?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes. Final motion, I'll entertain a motion to purchase playground equipment, including installation and safety surfacing, from Bidding Recreation Incorporated under CoStars-14 contract vendor number 177246 for an amount not to exceed $74,999.95 per quote dated March 3rd, 2014.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this motion? Hearing no discussion, roll call vote.
Mr. Amendola?
Yes.
Ms. Amendola?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Post?
Yes.
Ms. Whitesell?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes. We've come to the additional citizen comments, so anyone that wanted to make additional citizen comments, you can do it now. Please limit it to 3 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow citizens, I just want to inform everybody that a fallacy has been presented to us by the engineer this evening. I'm very, very concerned, very dismayed by the fallacy, what that is, that the street in front of Clearview, 401 Clearview, has to be a one-way. The ordinances in the state of Pennsylvania, DOT and borough ordinances do not require for this additional space to incur a one-way street. The space that we're asking for was initially 6 to 12 inches. We are trying to acquire an arborist opinion to work with Mr. Bobronik on his opinion of the trees in front of 401 Clearview. The excavation, we believe, will not be 24 inches. I have documentation that was presented at Mr. Callen's meeting last week showing the excavation cut from last year. I had worked with Mr. Alberto Hallquin from Gateway, asking them in advance. I had asked Borough Manager Callen at previous meetings about the situation, and I was informed that there was no plans to cut down the trees. I learned last week that we've known about this plan since 2012. However, I have documentation here allowing me to groom the trees at an expense of $1,200 and taking care of the trees that apparently everybody knew was going to be taken down. And after the events of these past few borough meetings, I'm believing that there's a lot of contention and confusion, and there's a lot of institutional knowledge that has been passed on to many councils. That is water under the bridge. One of the issues that we have to address is, what are we going to do about the current situation with the trees in Pearl and Clearview? I don't believe that there needs to be a 9-foot bump out. That was never the intention. And one of the fallacies that we have to address is the cartway is 19 feet wide total from curb to curb. If you have cars parked there, the cartway is about 13 feet wide. Only one vehicle can pass, all right? It is essentially a one-way as it is, and we're not asking for a one-way. What we're asking for is there to be no parking in front of that bump out, allowing traffic to go by. There aren't school buses, there aren't fire trucks passing each other on the street, because up Clearview Avenue it is impossible as it is. It is essentially a one-way street until people pull over and allow one to pass. And what we're asking for safety purposes, is that if the council would like to make it a no parking zone, I'm okay with it. I'm also okay with allowing the liability of the trees that exist, and if the trees die in 5 years, I will pay to cut down the trees myself, just as I have with the rest of the trees on my property. But my engineer has said they only need to come out 6 inches, and the whole concession with doing the bump out was in earnest to help Borough Manager Callan and a lot of the engineers to move forward with the bid process, because we do not want to see the public incur any more cost for these projects. However, we must not be hasty and make decisions that are going to impact future generations, impact our property values, impact the quality of life in our community, because people have not followed through with EPA requirements, DEP requirements for public participation, because this project is funded with local, state, and federal tax dollars. All right? This is very important that we follow due process. And as somebody that took an oath to this borough, and somebody that has a future here, I brought my colleagues to this community to invest. I have my friends from work, people I spent a lot of time with, investing in this community, buying homes. Mr. Chris Christopherson has a house on Crafton Boulevard. We don't want to see an engineer come in and tell us that tough luck, it's too late for you, you have to deal with whatever decision we make, and there's going to be no chance for you to actually address the council. Because let me tell you, if Mr. Harquin came to me while in the conversation I had to him last August and July while they're working phase 2 and said, Mr. Levesser, I'm really concerned about these trees and that they may have to come down. You need to go to council and talk about it. I would have addressed it. You've seen me come in here multiple times as it is, trying to improve the community. I am very invested in this community, and I put my money where my mouth is, and I'm investing in this property. I'm investing in having a consultant. I have 3 consultants, a registered landscape architect, a professional geologist registered in the state of Pennsylvania, and a professional engineer come to a meeting last week. And I called out the entire Shade Tree Commission to speak about this issue. And to come to this meeting and then have the engineer leave and not address the issue wholeheartedly dismays me as a taxpayer. Because it is in the best interest of the engineer and the borough manager to work with the citizens. I believe Mr. Callan is trying to work with us. We've had a very pleasant discourse. Once he learned about it, the situation, I believed him to be dismayed, and he's trying to push forward with the plans. He's trying to work in the best interest of the taxpayer. However, the rest of us taxpayers on Clearview Avenue are very, very concerned about this natural resource and about the borough engineer not engaging the stakeholders, because we are stakeholders and we're very, very passionate about this situation, and we don't want to see somebody come in to our community and tell us, it's going to be my way or the highway. That's not acceptable. And for him to say that it has to be 9 feet out, that is not what our engineers are telling us. We asked for initially 6 inches, the curb to be bumped out 6 inches, and for them to continue on their work as they did in other phases. Unfortunately, the engineer did not fully engage the council, and I'm very dismayed. And I'm very passionate that moving forward, as a person that sits on one of the commissions, that we are going to engage our citizens, and that we're going to follow the law, the code, and we're going to take the time to make the appropriate decisions on the best interest for everybody. And the best interest in my mind is, let's allow for there to be a no parking area. If that's what if the cartway is compromised and it's smaller, but it doesn't have to be a one-way. That's one thing. It's a fallacy. That is not
Rick
true.
recommended against it. Rick recommended against it.
He's gonna come back with some designs.
So,
Yep.
I'm just very passionate because we really have, we don't want to see a mob scene. I have organized everybody here to be very respectful. We want to engage Mr. Cowan. He's trying his best to work on behalf of everybody. And, we obviously have to deal with some poor decision-making made 5-10 years ago. And obviously the new investors in this community, the new stakeholders, would like to see a dialogue that engages the council, that engage the electorate, and engage these issues that are important to the people that live in these.
So can I address your comment?
Yes.
What I saw tonight is I saw every effort being made of council to try to
Yes.
save these trees,
Yes.
right? And the information that you provided now about the cartway and it not being one way, I think it would all be our preference not to change the road in any direction, right? And make everything just work as it could work, right? So you made some good points. We
Thank
definitely have some more due diligence to do with our engineer, but we as a body, I think, are trying to save these trees.
Thank
And
you,
we
sir.
want to save those trees.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate your time. Anyone else for citizen comments?
Excuse me if I don't have a voice, my
Your
name is last
name
name
and
is
address,
I'm,
please.
I'm working on it. My name is Crystal Beam, I live at 57 Belvedere Street. And I just want to say, we lost a 100-year-old tree about 2 years ago, and I can't tell you how many people stopped by and questioned why we were taking this beautiful maple down. The tree, we did not want to take it down, it nearly killed my children. We walked up on our sidewalk and a large branch fell down. It was perfectly green, it looked like there wasn't anything wrong with it. We paid to have 3 arborists study our tree before we decided to take it down. It was very painful for us, and it cost us $3,000 to take this tree down. We have had some sinkage already in our land. We've brought in topsoil. With the decaying just in 2 years, and looking at our land, even right now, today, now that the snow has melted, we are seeing even greater sinkage. I mean, we brought in topsoil, we brought in sod. It's very sad, and I'm very concerned for the future if you do remove these trees and you think of the root structures that are underneath that are going to die and decay and the long-term impact. And I want to stress that I think that everyone needs to consider what's going to happen in the future. Something else that I want to talk about is the Green Infrastructure Grant. If this is truly a grant that is aimed at green technology, I'm actually looking at putting a 90-car parking lot at my horse ranch in Washington County. I'm required to do a 9x21 space, impervious parking, bumpers. And one of the things that they've encouraged me to do is green parking spaces. They want the trees, they want me to landscape, because they don't want me to tap into State Route 18 with all of that drainage. And I'd like to say that I don't think our infrastructure can, take the loss of 4 large trees. He mentioned, I'm sorry, I don't recall your name.
Philip.
Philip. He mentioned that, underneath this tree, if they take the tree away, and this is only one of the trees that he's talking about, I can't speak for the other 4 you want to remove, but think of what's going to happen with that runoff, and I'm sure the engineer has already considered this. But trees do serve an ecological purpose, and that's why I'm designing in a 90-car parking lot, I'm looking at putting a lot of trees because I want to alleviate the runoff. So on another note, I think that a contingency based on the contract, nobody wants to see the borough have to spend an additional $300,000, and I think that a contingency should be put in the clause somewhere, you know, you proceed with the contract, you know, perhaps factoring in this bump out, and if, as you proceed, things don't go as planned, then, you know, you put in there that you will continue the project and you will work with the residents on a tree resolution, whether or not to keep them or leave them. And I also would like to suggest that you see if it's possible to do an accelerated traffic study. You talk about 3 months. Is it feasible to do it in half that time? Do we need more resources?